This is the Stage Time Podcast. I'm your host, Travis Valle. Today with me, I have Dawn Womack. Dawn, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Dawn Womack. I am a comedian, podcaster, and comedypreneur.
Today, I'm going to be talking with Dawn about her first performance in comedy. And Dawn and I have worked together for quite a while now, probably, 2 years, I think?
I think so. Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, so Dawn was actually one of the people who put me on some of my earlier comedy shows. We'll probably talk about that a little bit. She is currently the CEO of what is now known as X2 Comedy, but that might be changing soon. Is that right?
That is correct. We got a new name and a new logo.
Do you want to introduce it here, or do you want to wait till you have more stuff?
Oh, no, I would love to.
I have no idea when this is coming out, so you can...
It's coming out.
It might be old news by then.
It might be. We are changing our name to FWAF, which is the Funny Womacks and Friends. And we're doing that for a few reasons. I started comedy in March 2018. My husband was not doing stand-up comedy. And 3 years ago, he started doing comedy. I put him on shows. He's getting better all the time as a comic. And we do a lot of shows together here locally and now outside the Shenandoah Valley. So we're known as the Funny Womacks, and they'll see our names on all the flyers. And so that personalizes it, but also helps the community that we live in, because we have people like you, Travis, and your guest from an earlier podcast, Kyle Remnant, who are now producing shows. And our brands are different, but we like to hop on each other's shows and support each other. And then this way it gives the community a good idea of what they're buying when they're buying a ticket in terms of what the brand is. And just our heart is we think of people as our friends, people that come to buy tickets and see our shows, people that are on my podcast, the partners where we do pop-up shows, and the comedians that grace our stages. If you support us, we consider you a friend.
Yeah. Do you want to plug your podcast real quick, by the way?
I would love to. It is the Virginia's for Laughers podcast, a podcast about all things non-hiking in the Shenandoah Valley.
All right. So, today we're going to talk to you about your first comedy performance, but kind of leading up to that, one of the things I wanted to ask, what got you interested in stand-up comedy in the first place?
Basically, I wanted to face my fears of doing it. I got into film acting or acting later in life and fell in love with comedic acting. And I asked myself, what is the one thing that scares you the most to become a better stand-up comic or a better comedic actor? And that was stand-up comedy. But I crack up my friends all the time and my family all the time, but it was intimidating. I didn't know how to turn those funny ideas or stories into a stand-up comedy routine. So I took classes in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is 3 hours from here one way, because at that time we did not have a stand-up comedy scene here in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Yeah. And there were no classes, and there was the closest classes that I could find. So that's how I got started.
That's a rough drive.
Yeah. 4 weeks, 5 weeks straight.
To a rough place, yeah.
Yep.
So there is kind of a trope of comedy actors transitioning to, or stand-up comedians transitioning to acting and then transitioning to more dramatic or serious roles. Mm-hmm. And you don't really see that go the other way, because you have some examples I can think of, like Will Smith or Adam Sandler, who start off doing goofy stuff, but then they do these very kind of Oscar bait movies and stuff. And was that kind of your kind of line of thinking in that? Did you think I can transition from comedy to drama a little bit more? Or did you just like comedy so much that you wanted to kind of focus on that?
Well, interesting you bring that up. I started out really a drama actor, more so than a comedic actor on film. And it just, I have my most views on YouTube as an alcoholic mom, Sarah Lopez.
I was about to ask, what's your most famous role that you think people would recognize you from? Is that it?
Oh, would they recognize me from that? I have auditioned for several roles on bigger projects. Dope Sick was the most recent one. And I auditioned for, gosh, I think it was over 15 roles. Didn't actually land one, but when you're in the game of acting, the fact that they keep asking you to come back and audition again and again says that they see something in you. They're just trying to find the right place for you.
Yeah.
But I didn't start out auditioning for roles that big. I started out as a background actor on House of Cards and Veep. And you can see me, yes. You can
What
see
episodes?
me.
You know the episodes and
Oh,
seasons?
yes. Let's start with House of Cards.
Okay.
You can see me very briefly standing against a wall in a cabinet room as cabinet member number 12 in season 4, episode 4 of House of Cards.
Oh, wow. Did you come up with like a whole backstory for yourself? Like,
You don't have to when you're a background actor. You just stand there.
no, but just do it just to get yourself into the mindset. Just be like, all right, I'm the secretary of Treasury, and
Don't
this
overthink
guy,
that.
what's his name, Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
We don't like each other, but we get the job done. And so,
No, I mean, other background actors, I've had quite a few interesting experiences with background actors on big sets.
so wait, you were in House of Cards and Veep.
And Veep.
Were you the same character, maybe?
No.
You don't think that's
No, in
translated over
Veep, I
the
remember.
same universe?
No, in Veep, I had a scene with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I don't think that.
Elaine from Seinfeld.
Yep, Elaine from
And
Seinfeld.
other things, I'm sure.
And I was in a book line to get her autograph. She was at a bookstore. And I actually went up to the front, and she was in character, so she was nonplussed with anybody that came by that table. But yeah, I'm not so sure that made it. But I do
Wouldn't it be
remember
funny
that.
if she was like, weren't you in House of Cards or something like that? When she walked up to
Totally
you?
doubt that.
Yeah.
I totally doubt that. There were a lot of extras that day.
Or
so
again,
I doubt
assuming
that.
it's the same universe, she'd be like, "Well, I work with you in the White House because you're in the cabinet."
Yeah. And probably
So-
not happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had a few roles,
Mhm.
and you decided you want to get more kind of stage time, I guess, which is kind of the point of this podcast.
Yeah.
But were there any stand-up comedians in particular that you found influential, or who you tried to kind of model yourself after, maybe?
That's such a great question. There's so many fantastic comics out there. There is a comic, Kathleen Madigan.
I'm familiar with her.
Yeah.
I think she may have got started on Last Comic Standing, or maybe she
I'm
was.
not
She's
totally
been
clear
somehow
on that.
affiliated with that. But anyway, so
Yeah.
Kathleen Madigan.
Kathleen Madigan has
What about her stood out?
her style and her storytelling style is really magnificent, and her family stories are, tapping into that in my own comedic voice. There are some things about her style that aren't exactly me, but are influential in terms of what I aspire to in terms of becoming a better comic.
I could see you guys giving off the same vibe.
Yeah,
Like,
can't you see that?
yeah, like your
Mine a
thumbnail
little
would
bit-
be in her suggested videos on YouTube or something like that.
Right? Right, she's a little bit more sarcastic, although I'm a little bit more Pollyanna.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what made you want to actually try stand-up comedy for the first time? Like,
Well-
actually, what gave you the push to actually say, this is the day I'm going up on stage?
Right. Oh, to take the class?
No, to like actually. Well,
to-
that's right. So you took a
I
class.
took a class.
So was
right.
there some sort of like over the course of that? Was that when you had your first performance? Like, what was your actual first performance?
It was
I
in
guess?
the graduation showcase at
Okay.
the end of that class. So there was 4 weeks of classes, and then we had a graduation showcase. It was a ticketed event open to the public, and that was the first time that I performed stand-up in front of a live audience.
Nice. So it was a showcase specifically for the graduates. Now, how was that class overall? Do you think, in terms of the quality of comedians? I don't want you to talk trash about your.
No, they're
comedians,
great
but I mean,
people. I
you're
had
all
good
first time.
experience. Right. And in anything, even those of us who've done several shows, some nights are the greatest night in comedy, and other nights you learn a lot about yourself. And there was a varied response and varied performances, and some people shined more than others. And it was a really good showcase, I thought, and I did well. And I thought I was going to just check it off my bucket list and go home. And I learned what I needed to learn to become a better comedic actor, and that was going to be that. Except somebody in the audience produced comedy shows and came up to me afterwards and said, "You're really great. You're hilarious. I am producing a show and I would like to hire you and pay you to be on my show."
Oh, wow. So you got discovered right away.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things so that's an interesting kind of first experience where you had this kind of setup where you were coached into what works, what doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
and you and the people in that class probably had more prep time than your average show who just
Correct.
hops up on stage on an open mic. What were some of the lessons that kind of stood out to you from that you kind of stuck with you when you're trying to get on stage for the first time?
Yeah, I think one of the things that stuck out to me the most, I'm not so sure it's about tied in directly to getting up to on stage for the first time, but it still was very encouraging and eye-opening, is this teacher had some SNL writing experience and other professional experience that was really
That's impressive, depending on what
impressive.
seasons he was on.
Or she.
She was on.
She was not. She wasn't.
There I go,
She was
just
the
assuming.
writer. Yeah, she was in the writing room, not on the actual stage as an actor.
No, I know, but
yes, it's really an impressive comedic resume she had. And so her experience in that, she told us the first day how these comedians that we see on comedy specials and all of that, they have to submit their entire set to the producers because they, of course, want to know what's going to be filmed and put out on their network. And I thought that was so eye-opening to me because before taking that class, I had the impression that funny people are just funny and they just go out there and they entertain people for an hour and then go home. The prep behind that, the work behind what these household name comedians do, I had no idea how hard they worked and what they went through to get to that point until I took that class. I just assumed they made the right connections and it just came out and it was natural to them.
I think that's something I was pretty conscious of when I got on stage for the first time because I had this kind of meta awareness of this is something that's difficult. People put years of practice into this to get it right. So I'm probably not going to be good the first time, but I can at least understand there is, I don't want to say a formula, but there's strategies to going on stage. And I've told this before to people who've thought about going on stage. You can't just tell a story about your friends or one time you got hurt or something like that because that might be fun dinner conversation, but that's not going to make an audience laugh when you're standing on stage. There needs to be more prep into that, like what you're saying.
Exactly. And that is some of the same exact thoughts I had, which is why I felt it was intimidating to me to begin with. And the thought of just going to an open mic and figuring it out was even more intimidating for that very reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you invite like any family or friends out to that first show?
A few. My husband came and some friends that lived in the area we stayed with because they lived close by and they came to the show. Yeah.
So I think that's pretty unique too because my first experience, I didn't invite anyone. I kept it a secret because I was so afraid I was going to bomb. And did you have that kind of added pressure of, oh, my friends and family are here?
Not really. And
or did you feel very supported? Was that
I felt supported. What I had as a strength for me is it wasn't a strange place for me to step on stage and hold a mic. This was just a new format of doing that because I had speaking experience, acting experience, on film experience with speaking roles because I did graduate from the background actor and I did do
asking Julia Stripes for her autograph.
I wish. But I did independent student film first, then independent film work, then local and regional commercials, and then eventually, being able to audition for bigger roles. So that all, just being in front, that felt like that gave me the confidence to at least give it a try. But I can't say that I wasn't nervous. I was definitely nervous to go up there and do it. Yeah.
Quick side note, if you hear any jingling, that's the dogs in the room. This is a very shoddy production. But I did want to... They're fine. It's not bad. The husband's coming in to swoop him out of the way. But It's fine. Just in case the listener thinks that they're going crazy and hearing stuff. But did you? Oh, I shouldn't have gone on that tangent now because I forget what I'm saying. I can edit this out. Oh yeah.
There we go.
Oh, do you remember any of the jokes that you told?
One of the first jokes I told, I still tell now is, I have one son that ended up in the NFL, which is a miracle because I played 1 year of high school basketball, scoring 2 points the entire season for the other team. And that actually is a joke from that class.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's one you stuck with, and did it get the response that it gets today? That's
yes,
good.
it does. Yeah, it did.
Yeah. I think that's another thing too is, the material that you do the first time you perform is going to be very experimental. But I mean, with your class, so did you practice any of these jokes like in front of your family and friends, or was it kind of a big surprise when they came?
Pretty much. Yeah, it was a big surprise for them.
Okay. I was going to say that's one of the things I always feel self-conscious about is if I'm going to practice jokes to my wife or my friends or something like that, and then I invite them out to a show and they just hear the same jokes that they've heard like in the workshop phase, then it's probably not going to land with them at least. But I don't know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Maybe I had different puppies at the time, but I did practice with him.
Yeah. I do annoy random friends today. Like I'll send messages to people like, "What do you think of this?" And then I'll just put a joke in writing and see if it works for them, and then hopefully it'll sound better when I do it on stage. But I'm always worried that all the workshopping I do, trying to check to see if it's stage ready, by the time I actually get it on stage, are people even going to laugh because they've already heard so many different phases of it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like your favorite song. You love it, but when you listen to it 20 times, it probably get tired of it after a while. So
yeah, I think that depends too. There's some favorite songs I think I've heard a million times. I'll still listen to it again, and then other ones you've had enough. Yeah.
And so overall, would you say you had a good set? I mean, that producer thought so, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, I was actually. I would say it was a good night for sure. For a first night in comedy for a live audience. I got a lot of compliments after the show, and I knew and still know that you always have room to grow in this craft. Even those that are at the top of their game in comedy would say the same. Yeah. There's no end to learning in this craft, I feel.
Yeah. And people's taste in what's funny changes too. So I mean,
think
audience.
So too.
So you have to kind of evolve with that, I think, as well. Jokes that Bob Hope did in whatever decade he was alive probably don't fly as well today.
And some probably still do. I think they do.
Some might.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there is the adjustments you have to make, especially. So that actually kind of brings me to another question. So when was your first open mic?
Oh my gosh. So
how far between your first performance at that showcase versus going to an open mic stage? Because I imagine that's a very different vibe and crowd that you would have had to face.
It was. I believe my first open mic experience was at the Southern in Charlottesville.
Okay.
Because we did not have any open mics here in Harrisonburg at that time either. And Stanton had some open mics I ended up doing at that time when I first started out. But the Southern was much more regular. Yeah. So I was going to the Southern and doing open mics back when Winston Hodges was going regularly and Paige Campbell. If you're around locally, those names will be familiar to you. If not, listen out for Winston Hodges because I believe he will one day be a household name. So, yeah. Yeah. That's when I was going to those.
So how was that vibe compared to the one where people paid to come see you do comedy?
Well, open mics do have a different vibe than a paid show in general.
Were you kind of reassured of your comedy skills, or did you suddenly lose a lot of confidence from the open mic crowd?
I felt reassured and supported. I feel like the Charlottesville comedy scene, especially with Chris Allen as the leader, he creates a very supportive environment for the comics to work out their new material and keep going and encourage them to keep going.
So, like, what were the phases of going from the comedy graduation show to that producer? So was that your second show then?
Yes, it was. And then what happened is there were comedians on that show that also produced shows. And then they invited me to do...
So you're just piggybacking from one show to the next.
I really...
That comedy show really set you up for some early success. That's awesome.
It really did. And this was supposed to be a bucket list item and check it off and one and done. Mm-hmm. And what I'm doing now was not even in my
radar of what you wanted to do in the future.
No.
And here you are now, kind of a pretty big local comedy producer yourself.
Yes.
And hopefully doing the same thing for people. Well, you have a comedy class going on right now.
We do. We absolutely do.
Do you talk about your first experience with them?
I haven't. This is our fourth cohort, so I have talked about it before. We usually get into that toward in the third and fourth week. We talk about it a little bit, and we just did our second week last night. So
gotcha. How's that coming?
It's going great. This class is hilarious, and we are very much looking forward to their graduation showcase. Yeah, they've got some natural talent going on in this class.
That kind of brings me back to one thing. The people in your class, did any of them stick with comedy?
They have, and some of them have since gone on to do some really cool things and bigger things, and some of them are also producing shows, and some of them aren't doing it anymore. Yeah.
So that's one of the things too. Is like you mentioned, some people might see it as a bucket list, and once they get it done, they kind of had their fill and then move on. But you stuck with it, and I think especially people who have success, they're more likely to stick with it because there is a good feeling that comes along with the validation of people laughing when you say something funny, especially if you didn't think it was as funny as the crowd kind of took it.
Yeah, that can be surprising sometimes, but also a gift because it can help your bit or joke, whatever you're working on, evolve because your audience can feed you information to make it better you weren't even anticipating.
So what was your biggest takeaway from that first graduation show in terms of your set or your comedy skills?
Honestly...
No, lie to me.
You will not, Travis, I promise you. I could do this is the overwhelming feeling that I had. I can do this. I don't know where this is going to go or what's going to happen, but I can do this. And I'm willing to explore it to see how far it will
go. They can do it too. They support you.
Yeah.
Dogs.
My dogs. They're being part of the show right now.
How long ago was that? The graduation show?
I did that class in November 2016.
Okay.
The showcase was December 2016. My first paid gig was February 2017.
Okay, so we're going up almost on 10 years, about 8 years now.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And just keep growing, which is
absolutely. Awesome. Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to try stand-up comedy for the first time?
That's such a great question. Do it and don't be afraid of the outcome.
Yeah. I think that is something that probably keeps people off the stage the most is the fear of failure. And I think in particular, and I do a whole joke about this, but with comedy, there is just this debilitating feeling of, what if I say something and they don't laugh? I don't know what it is about comedy in particular, because I play music and I don't get that nervous playing music. And again, that's part of the joke is like, with music you get a pity clap, but with comedy it's just dead silence. And 30 seconds of silence can feel like an hour, and you just don't know where to go from there. And it's, especially for someone early on, it's hard to recover from. Did you have any missteps in your first or any like jokes that didn't land in your first set that you...
Yeah, and you just play with it. I can't remember what they were. I just remember one didn't go how I liked, and I was like, okay, so you don't like that one. Next, and you know what I mean?
I feel like the audience tends to respond well when you address the elephant in the room about a joke that doesn't land. If you can either point it out or riff on it, sometimes you can riff on it and do that. You were at a show recently not a show, but an open mic that I was hosting where I did a joke, and it didn't land, and I made it. It was about drinking at breakfast, and I said, that was a breakfast joke. It's the most important joke of the day. And everybody laughed at that. So
Yeah.
that's now part of my joke that I'm going to do from now on. So there are ways to recover from it. And I think that is something that's difficult, is because you will have those times where I think you hate yourself and you just lose all confidence, but you need to kind of stick with it.
Yeah, and I think don't be afraid of it. I know it's harder to actually sometimes live in it, because you're thinking about the negative side of it not going well. But you learn the most and make the biggest leaps in your own growth as a comedian when you have those moments. Because in those moments, it opens up this door where your own personality, your own funny bone, could just tap into that and respond to the situation. Those times when you're cracking up your friends at the cocktail party or around at the bar, that's, you tap into that and things come out of you that you wouldn't otherwise have happen because you're not in control of that situation. So you can be more free-flowing. Yeah,
that's one thing I've been trying to adjust to more, is being more free-flowing on stage. Because before it was, especially because when I went up my first time, it was very scripted. Like I had specific things I wanted to say. I was not going to deviate. I didn't want to let anything deviate me from that, because I was like, this is what's funny. This is what will get people to laugh. And I didn't want to stray from that because I didn't want to risk it. But now I'm kind of getting more into playing around with it and seeing what I can do on stage, because I think it is something with comedians where they tend to be funny in person and in casual conversation. And if they can bring that to stage, then that'll help them.
Yes.
Help the audience to like them as much as, people in the party.
Exactly, because that's where you make the connection with the audience. Is the more you are, the more the audience is going to connect with you. They feel that vulnerability, they feel that authenticity, and they connect with you. They maybe can identify themselves in you, or they can identify their brother or their sister or their husband or their partner or their coworker in you when you are bringing your own funny out on stage.
Yeah. So, it's a great experience. I'm glad you stuck with it, because I think you helped me kind of move forward in my comedy ventures as well.
It's good to hear. Yeah. Thank you.
You're
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So is there anything else you want to kind of say about your first experience or anything? We're coming up to the end here. So do you want to plug anything? I don't know. Again, I don't know when this is going to come out, but if you want to predict for the future, any shows or any ventures you got coming up or anything like that?
We got a lot of cool adventures coming up. I think the best thing to do is to check out our website, thefunnywomacks.com. That's WOMACKS.com. And also follow the podcast anywhere you listen. You can listen to our podcast, but now we're also on YouTube.
Nice.
At thefunnywomacks.com. We're going to be building that YouTube channel and adding more fun content and comedy clips, but the podcast is also on there as well. We started doing the video version, so you can even see it. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, we'd love it if people did that. And I would also say for any comedians out there that wherever you live, if you're thinking about producing a show or hosting an open mic, it's a great way for you to get more experience as a comic by producing events, and don't be shy to try that also.
And it's not as hard as you think either. It's literally, you just have to find a venue that's willing to host it and ask them.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Especially for open mics. That's an easy way to start. Or easier way to start, I should say.
You might need to provide
a little too much, but easier way. Yeah.
You might need to provide some of your own equipment, but that's relatively easy. I actually have a video on YouTube about how to start your own comedy open mic, so follow me there. But yeah, thank you, Dawn, for taking this time to talk with me. I appreciate it. You can follow Dawn Womack at funnywomacks.com or Funny Womacks on the Funny Womacks on Instagram, Facebook, now YouTube.
And,
thank you very much.
Thank you.